I'm Margaret in Windsor, kidnapped in 41 and brought to Moulton, Alabama, given the name of a dead twin, Peggy Ann Dempsey. I married to Childers, and I still have to use that name. Carl, the other twin, and Peggy were dead. They were killed by their mother. They were born out of wedlock, and it was a pigsty. There's no other way to describe where they dropped me off. I'm assuming that they flew me into Cortland, Alabama. The air base had just been completed there. This is, I'm heir to the British Crown, Victoria II. There was an addendum to my father, Edward VIII, forced removal. And all of it was a lie about him marrying Wallace Simpson. She married a double. And I've put all this on so many tapes. They're easy to find. I'm not getting them out this morning. It's rough where I'm living. I've had a very rough life, and I don't know where my sons Mark and Scott are. And I've been trying to go home for so long, and they've been trying to get me. And the special relationship that the UK has with the United States is not what is presented. It's because the United States and part of my family, Elizabeth's father and mother, part of the Illuminati, or the Jews. The Jews married the Rothschilds into Elizabeth's mother, Bose. And I assume that's kind of the end they had. And they took down my father. He was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, Irish-American, sister to artist Georgia O'Keefe. So I put all this out, pictures, all of it, the birth certificates where the state of Alabama deliberately, I mean, it's like, hey, here it is. They deliberately crossed over the birth dates that were given to Carl and Peggy and inserted above the birth date given to me, January the 7th of 39. And even the doctor's name, Irwin, Price Irwin was misspelled deliberately. So I won't go on. There was like a link to my divorce. There was an addendum to my divorce because my husband, I found out later, was CIA. And after I was almost killed with antifreeze. And but anyway, there was an addendum and to it, and it's almost like a clue or a link to my father had an addendum to his forced abdication. It was illegal, and it ensured that I was not disinherited, and I am Victoria II legal heir. And that's why the 99-year seal was put on it. The Kennedys were part of it. Joe Kennedy was ambassador then, and that's why appointed by Roosevelt. I put all this on, so I'm being redundant trying to tell you where I'm coming from. I usually put a Larry Flint endorsement, the magazine. It was April of '84, because it's an attention getter, and I think that's why they, in part, that it was given to me. Mr. Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia, just not far from Marietta, Georgia, Atlanta, where I was doing the book at Monarch Apartments on Velk Road. And I had a letter from the FBI June the 23rd of '79. I'd moved into Laurelwood, and that's where my ex-husband came back because so much was done to my kids. And I didn't know that he knew the woman that lived there. I just found out her name, Twyla Joyce Pelham Childers. She lives in Rutherford, Georgia, I believe. That's what I just saw, and it's like a credit report you can pull up on it on Google. I just happened to look through it. I know that I was told by people she had my divorce at a time when, what was she doing with it? Because I had antifreeze put in April Fool Day of '80, and I thought it was the book, but I was writing about mind control murders. And she had my divorce. I had all my jobs, the condition I was in, my jobs were blocked. And I went back, and I'm not going to tell what all was done to me, but I went back there to the Cobb County, who knew all of this, police department, Cumberland Mall. And I called a friend of mine that I'd hired when I worked at the doctor's office, Dr. Kahn and McCoy and Itkin, and Rafiq Raphael, their Urban Medical Center. Windy Hill Road. I had hired her there to work with me. And this is later now. This is in '82, and I've had the antifreeze. I have worked for the VA in that condition in Huntsville. Fred Simpson lived at Warren House, so you can follow me. Warren Commission covered up the JFK. That was a mind control murder, but it would have led back to my kidnapping and the takedown of my father, and in essence, the United States installed their own monarch, so the Kennedys were part of it. Now, and of course, later I find out in '83 when I'm flown out to Flint that my father never married Wallace Simpson, so working for Simpson, living at the Warren House Apartments, the next job I had was for Doyle Duke, as in the Duke of Wood. So it was like clues to my identity. Now, before somebody, I don't know, I'm 76 years old. I'm on a cane. I can hardly walk because of the things that are being done to me that never stop. But the reason I'm putting this on, I wrote about mind control murders back then, and the antifreeze should have killed me. But instead I was shoved into a car by an ex-husband, and Philip, that I grew up thinking he was a half-brother, he's retired from ATF. And you get your agencies involved in all this, like the Eric Rudolph, and I won't go any further on all that was done in that. He was accused of the bombings, Olympic Park bombings, and part of it is where I'm at. They have to have me in a certain position, because these are done in patterns, like Olympic Park. I was at the Knights Inn or Olympic, and they're the same thing here near Troutville, outside Atlanta. But outside of Roanoke. But I'm going to say this because I know people probably tune it out, and I don't have, if they even bother to watch. Everybody knows about this. The media knew about my kidnapping. They know about the murders. They don't intend to tell it unless NBC tells it. I saw this morning they had brought back something about the Patsy Ramsey, JonBenet murder. I told this back then. It's where they had me then, and also when that happened, where I was at. But just before I was moved, it's where I moved. They moved me August of this year. Right next door to me, a woman and her husband, and their last name is Ramsey. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Sheila and Greg Ramsey, and they were from West Virginia, like Patsy Ramsey was. So they get into a whole lot of patterns, and they can be proven, the murders, because mind control is the murder weapon, and they're not going to find the person through DNA, because this is mind control. It goes back to the agency that's doing it, and doing it in patterns, because how many mind control murders have been done that you never will know about? But if you care, you can go back and look at my other tapes. And at the same time that this Ramsey is living next door to me, she was deliberately moved in there, and I moved in right after then. The murder of Hannah Graham, who's English, citizen from England, at Charlottesville College, University of Virginia, Charlottesville. Jesse Matthews, black man, was arrested for her kidnapping and then murder, and also he's accused of murdering Morgan Harrington here. Her father's a psychiatrist here. And one of the let me say this real quick before this goes off. One of the murders that I put on here a lot, the tape, because people can relate to it, he was a psychiatrist, the Fort Hood shooter. He finished college at Virginia Tech where the 33 shootings happened, mass shootings that were mind control, and they're done in patterns. At Virginia Tech, April the 16th of '07. So, without going any further on it, I usually have the photos out and everything, but I got a phone call when Jesse Matthews was arrested and brought back from Texas. He'd run. And I'm not going to say the person's name. I don't know. He's a retired Virginia State Trooper. And his wife, I don't know if they were friends or not. I really don't. know whether they were just told what to say and do at the time.